Welcome to our Engage podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, this is where Seth and Anthony at Faith Presbyterian Church in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, discuss relevant topics with a biblical twist. We're so excited you're here. We have a great topic for you. All right, so tonight our quote is by Rene Descartes, who says, "If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice." Okay? Yeah, good one. One more time. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. All right, what do you think about that, Seth?
I think that it strikes a chord because there is always those people who they never want to make a decision on anything, right? They want someone to make it for them. When they're given a hard choice, hard decision, they just want to take the null position. And what I like about that quote is that to those people, it says that position is still a choice. You're still making a choice. And every choice has a consequence. So we as individuals do not get the luxury of taking the easy way out by doing something that doesn't have any ramifications to it. Everything, whether we say yes, no, or just, as this quote is talking about, just say, I'm not going to decide anything. Every one of those has ramifications to it.
Yes, I like the word ramifications because at the end of the day, no decision is a decision.
Right.
And that's what people don't realize is if you're not going to make a decision, that is a decision in itself. I remember one of my professors saying that every time you say no, you're saying yes to something better. That's, I think, what he's getting at. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Now, the Bible talks about this kind of thing. It talks about sins of omission and sins of commission. In James chapter 4, verse 17, it says, if anyone knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. That's a pretty cool verse because we define so much of our life on the things we do, right? We do this, we do that.
Right.
What James is saying is that there are sins of omission, and that are the things that we do not do. So sitting at home and waiting for every light to turn green isn't an option. Playing it safe isn't an option. You cannot sit at home and wait for the planets to align for you to get up and do something. You have to go out and be ambitious and give it your best shot. So there's sins of commission, sins of omission, and like what our philosopher is saying today, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
So to put it on a practical level, let's just say, one of the common things I always hear is people say that they don't want to have kids until they know it's the right time, or they want to get their finances in order. They want to get through college or whatever the case may be, right? You hear the phrase, and I guess this could be a quote in and of itself, which is, there's a right time for everything. Ecclesiastes talks about that. There's a time for everything. So, like, when you say things like, there's no time to just, sitting back and waiting for the plans to align is not an option. But to those, a lot of people, they're going to immediately react negatively to that because they're going to be thinking, well, no, there are, like, for instance, like having kids. Like, now, I guess my question to you is, do you agree with that?
Yes. One of the things you have to think about in all of these quotes, whether it's just tonight's, and by the way, I'm referring to tonight because we're at the church right now at a little after 10 p.m. recording this. But all of these quotes in our podcasts, in all these quotes you read online, you have to remember one thing, and that is there's a context that they are addressing. Remember, context is king. Whether that's a verse in the Bible or a quote like this, he's addressing something in particular. That's why he's writing this. So, there are certain quotes that out of context are damaging. I remember my dad's always saying growing up that silence is golden. And that's something that everyone has heard. But is that always true?
No.
Right? There's a time where you need to stand up and say something and fight for something.
Right.
Well, how do you know? And the answer is wisdom. The answer is the context. So, these are all to a particular situation, and you have to be, as the audience and as the person, wise enough to understand when to apply them. So if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. That's for a particular thing or moment in your life. If you continue to live that way, then that's a bad thing.
Got it. So for the audience member who's going through a difficult situation where they're having to make a tough choice and they're afraid of making a mistake, what would be your advice to that person?
I don't like to make decisions based off of fear. I don't like to do that. I don't think that we should do things like that. We shouldn't be making decisions primarily based off of fear. We should be making decisions based out of faith. One of my all-time great favorites, is victory favors the bold. So that's a Latin phrase, and we can do that maybe for a whole other show. But victory favors the bold, or fortune favors the bold. Here's what I know. You're listening to us right now, right? Mm-hmm. Because we were bold enough or courageous enough, if you want to call it that, to actually set up microphones, read quotes, put ourselves out there. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there are people out there that are scrutinizing this, whether it's our voices or the things that we're saying, whatever it is. However, we're still courageous enough to do it, whether that's something you're listening to or watching. It takes courage to put yourself out there. You may fail or you may succeed, but at the end of the day, you have to look back on a life well lived when you're 80, 90, 100 years old, and I think you're going to say, I'm glad I stepped out and I was courageous. I'm glad I stepped out and I was bold and tried those things, even if I tried and failed. It's better than going through life and being shackled in fear. What I've noticed is people who are shackled in fear, they come up with all these cute little excuses of why they're staying within their little box, and all those excuses sound good, but behind those excuses, it's really fear.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me, and I forget where I read it, but there was an illustration that someone had about two guys are in a bar, and one guy has done 10 things and failed every single time. And the other guy sitting next to him was a guy who has basically done the same thing every day for 30 plus years. And the guy who played it safe is criticizing the guy who's failed 1,000 times. And it was like, look at you, you're a failure. Nothing you've ever done has ever worked out. And the guy who failed said, yeah, but at least I have a resume that said that I tried. Mm-hmm. And how the person who was using this scenario, this illustration, was making the point that even if you failed 1,000 times, the fact that you went out and tried it, even after the first failure, shows that there's a lot of courage and a lot of ambition to you. And I mean, you've said this to me just even this past week, which is if you keep pursuing, you keep persevering over time, like it's not about going the extra mile. It's about going, remember what you said? It wasn't about going the extra mile. It was going like a mile and above or something like that.
I'm just going to nod.
You're just a nod?
You better believe it.
It was one of those moments of Anthony wisdom that you don't remember.
That's right. But I'm going to, since it was so effective, I'm going to take full credit for it.
Yeah. So, but, all right. Now, my question is what you as the viewers, the listeners, what do you think? Do you agree with us? We love hearing your story. Every time I see someone commenting about how one of our episodes impacted them, it brings so much joy to me. So, what is a time in your life that you were faced with a difficult decision? And how did you handle it? How did you get through it? And how did our podcast today possibly help you in a future decision? Let us know. If there's another quote that you kind of fits with this and you want us to talk about, please put it down there as well. And you'll see also down in the little info box, you'll see that there's a link to our website, our donation page if you want to donate and support our podcast. Also to our SoundCloud channel. It's all there. Any last words?
Sleep tight.
Sleep tight. Or good morning wherever you are. All right, everyone. We're out.